To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of troubles, and therefore end them. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub, for in that sleep what dreams may come. Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 4 of my Kaurismaki season. And today I'm going to talk about a 1987 film, Hamlet Goes Business, which does not feature the to be or not to be soliloquy. This is included in the Kaurismaki Artificial Eye box set, which I am working my way through in this series. We are 4 films in, and there's been 2 colour films, 2 black and white films, and coincidentally I really like the 2 black and white films a lot more than the 2 colour films. We've had a Dostoevsky adaptation of Crime and Punishment, which was Kaurismaki's debut feature, and now we have a Shakespeare adaptation, strangely enough, of Hamlet. It stars Pirkka-Pekka Pitelis in the titular role, and there's many Kaurismaki regulars and moustaches on show. I'm going to maybe be controversial for some Shakespeare fans, but I actually think Kaurismaki elevates his Hamlet adaptation by making it, or one of the themes of the film, he makes it about class. Obviously the play is set in a royal court. It's kings and queens and princes and princesses, which is obviously something, even though we can identify with what's going on a human level, we obviously can't really identify with living in a royal court or being a king or a prince. Whereas Kaurismaki sets it in the business world of sawmills and shipyards, which perhaps are going to be sold and replaced by making rubber ducks, which is a nice touch. There's lots of little Kaurismaki character flourishes and little odd flourishes that just enhance the film. But I think making it in that milieu, and like I said, making it about class, actually makes it much more approachable. You know, I have the Kenneth Branagh 4-hour film version, the Laurence Olivier version, but my favourite quote-unquote version of Hamlet is Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead from 1990, which is just one of my favourite films of all time. But that's not so much a Hamlet adaptation. It focuses on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who appear in Hamlet Goes Business as well. They're the 2 kind of side characters, the 2 school friends or childhood friends of Hamlet, who get kind of embroiled in the story and get to do not very pleasant jobs for the king, or the head of the company in this case. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, the story of Hamlet kind of goes on in the background and on the fringes of their story, but we're focusing on those 2 characters. And for me, that's clearly my favourite version of Hamlet. You know, it's not an official version of Hamlet, but Hamlet Goes Business by Kaurismaki might just be my second favourite. Straight adaptations of Hamlet um, aren't the best in my opinion. I know that's controversial. Um, so everybody pretty much knows the story. Hamlet's father gets killed by the man who fancies Hamlet's mum. His mum remarries to this guy. He becomes the head of the business or the court. In this case, there's something rotten in Finland, not Denmark. And Hamlet is obviously upset about this, strangely enough, and he wants to get his revenge. Meanwhile, he's got a thing for Ophelia, who is Polonius's daughter, and in this version, Laurie's sister. I believe that's a Horatio character. But you have to also kind of remember Hamlet isn't that much of a hero or a nice guy. I mean, certainly in this version, you know, he's selfish. He's very denigrating towards his driver and the cook and the help, which again the class thing comes into play. So he is a flawed character. You know, he's not this perfect hero character, and you could argue, you know, pretty much all of Shakespeare's main characters aren't like your prototypical hero. They all are flawed. Obviously, to a less extent or other. Obviously, when you get to Richard III, and obviously that's more villainous. So Hamlet isn't this perfect person. We see him early on with a ham in his mouth. Yeah, because what you are, I wouldn't eat. It's so he is a bit of an arse at times. He just pretty much wants to have sex with Ophelia. There's no real love there. Obviously, Ophelia doesn't want to have sex with him until she's married to stay pure, which doesn't please him a lot. So if you take it from Hamlet's not a very nice character, really. And yes, he is upset by these events. You also kind of forget that Hamlet, the play, it's a bit of a bloodbath. There's a fairly high body count. And again, I'm not really going into spoilers because everybody should pretty much know the story of Hamlet and how it ends. But again, Kaurismaki has wonderful flourishes. There's wonderful scenes like at the theatre when Hamlet gets the actors to recreate the murder of his father, which obviously upsets his mother and her husband. The death of Polonius is just absolutely wonderfully done. The death of Lowry or Horatio is just jaw-droppingly funny and wonderful, which I'm not going to spoil. You're going to have to watch the film to see that. It's quite amazing. There's lots of little flourishes. It's shot in black and white. Again, we have kind of this idea of a kind of faceless, lots of white blank corridors, even for, you know, the heads of this manufacturing company. There's not a lot of opulence. You still get this feeling that it's fairly run down. You know, we see shots of the factory but don't really see workers. Again, there's this issue of, you know, selling off the shipyards and the sawmills and manufacturing rubber ducks instead, which obviously the unions aren't happy about, and that becomes a plot point later on in the film. So again, the ending is slightly different. Spoiler alert, Hamlet still dies, just like the play. But again, it's done with a little twist, which again, for me, elevates it above a straight Hamlet adaptation, just because of it's about the relationship between these rich industrial types and their workers, not just in the factories and the shipyards and sawmills, but within their own home, their driver and their cook. So again, that element is really interesting, and again, really quite wonderful. The deaths are fantastic as far as coming up with imaginative ways of doing something that most people are familiar, even if they're not familiar with every single part of Hamlet. They're kind of familiar with the everybody dies ending. It's just a wonderful film. Again, I don't know why, but certainly the two black and white Kaurismaki films have just resonated with me more than the two colour ones out of the 4 films so far. Again, music is an important part of the film. There's a wonderful moment where Hamlet is having kind of an argument with Ophelia, and he happens to put on a tape of kind of classical, dramatic classical music, and then she walks out to this classical dramatic music, and then he switches off and kicks a jukebox which comes on and plays something completely different. It's just full of those little wonderful flourishes. The fact that they have board meetings, and I think you can see in one of the images I've put on the background, Hamlet sitting in a little table by himself drawing pictures with crayons. I mean, it's just, there's so many little wonderful flourishes in the film. Also, the deaths are really imaginatively done. It is a really fresh and wonderful reimagining adaptation of Hamlet. If you're a Shakespeare fan, you should really check out and see what you think. It's a wonderful little film that I would highly recommend. As with the 4 Kaurismaki films that I've looked at so far, it's got a sense of humour that might not appeal to everybody, but it's just a great wee film. So thank you very much for watching part 4 of Kaurismaki, Hamlet Goes Business, from 1987. And hopefully you'll join me for part 5. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.